Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Powerful Stuff. Powerful Stuff is, as I like to say, your one-stop shop for inner and outer connection with a little bit of play, a little bit of cheekiness, because I believe that play is power. I'm your host, Meredith Baker, leadership coach and founder of Powerful Stuff. And today I have on Oren Harris, who is an amazing transformational artist and generational voice. I actually had the amazing honor of having him on my Powerful Stuff Live show, and it's also now an episode where he did some spoken word that was very powerful, The Bridge and The Nice Guy. Yes. And I had seen him perform at our friend's amazing music and spiritual festival, Mycelium, in June, and I was like, I have to have this guy at Powerful Stuff. And then he told me an incredible story, which we'll get into today. Oren, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I love that, like, A, how it happened of just DMing you after seeing you perform at Mycelium, and B, like, after you performed at Powerful Stuff, and I was, like, commenting on how amazing your poems were. You went into this beautiful story
Yes.
about how you got to perform your poem on a stage of 40,000 people.
Yes.
And we only even scratched the surface of like the manifestation behind that. But I thought this would be such a cool theme to kick off the podcast for our listeners, because I think a lot of people have desires to be seen or to do big things. And sometimes it's so simple as just like committing to a thought and vocalizing it. So I'd love to just like, start with giving the listeners a taste of the poem, and then we can dive into like all of the crazy like stories
Yeah.
led up to that moment.
Let's do it. One thing I will say that led me to your event, or the way that I came into your event, you reached out and invited me, and then I spoke or performed at the event, and now I'm here, right? There's a similar thread there in the story that I'm going to tell about how I wound up on stage performing for 40,000 people. And I would simplify it to say that I call it living at the speed of spirit, right? It's not forcing, rushing, pushing, controlling, but it's also not hesitating and waiting, right? It's right in that pocket. And I feel like it is such an appropriate, such a beyond appropriate, I would say, with the way things are evolving and us evolving from the information age into the inspiration age. And because we're so inundated with information and there's so much chaos in the world, the value of intuition, which sifts and sorts like at the speed of light, this is a yes, this is a no, or this is a not right now, is something that we really even, I would say, need in life right now. And so when we're living by inspiration, by intuition, by this higher intelligence, and we kind of partner it with our logic and with our brain and our intellect, it's kind of like the perfect way for me to dance through life. And so likewise with you, I didn't research you. I didn't do a lot of due diligence or anything. It's just like my intuition was like, this feels good. Yeah, it's a yes.
Yay.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like
the intuition test.
A 15-second decision, and then now here we are in chapter 2 of the unfoldment of something really awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And just to kind of double down on the intuition piece, I think so many people can be so disconnected from their intuition. So like, how did you initially like reconnect to your intuition and learn to like really trust it? Because I think like for some people, they're like, how do I know if it's like my intuition speaking or my fear speaking,
Whew, that's a deep question. And there's so many chapters. When I think of like initial significant life-changing chapters of how I connected more deeply to my intuition, chapter 1, which was over a decade ago, was I basically opted out of people-pleasing. I realized that people-pleasing, and not in a positive way of being a pleasing person, but people-pleasing in all the subtle or not so subtle ways that we try to get approval, try to fit in, try to belong, essentially at the core just to be loved, right? I realized that it was an unwinnable game. It was like an infinite chess game with an infinite number of moves, but the game never ended. You never actually succeeded. And even every time you think you succeeded, just for an example, I'm like, oh, okay, I figured out how to be with Meredith, and it's, she likes me, she accepts me. So then I go to, my friend John, and I'm being the same way. And then now he doesn't like it, right? I'm triggering him. So I'm like, okay, make another alteration. I just need to slightly alter myself. And I'm like, ooh, now John likes me. And then I go to Mary, and
Yeah.
then it's like, oh shit, I got it wrong again, right? And then I go
Yeah.
back to Meredith, and Meredith is, having a bad day for one reason or another. And I'm being the exact same way, except for then you appear to not like me the same way. And then I try to alter again. I realize that it was an unwinnable game, and it was actually, in a way, disconnecting me from my own soul and
Yeah.
disconnecting me from my own heart. And so I just decided to opt out, which wasn't a one-off event. However, it was a destiny decision. I was like, God, to my own soul, I was like, I don't know where this is going to take me. I just know that I can't win that game. I extrapolated out as many moves as I could, and all the way to the end of my life. And it's like, I'll never win. I'll never be fulfilled or satisfied. And so the decision to opt out of it was a significant moment in my life.
Yeah.
I later, then, all these bonus manifestations were happening, like deeper self-respect, deeper self-honor, deeper self-love, um, deeper self-trust.
Yeah.
Because what it did was it took a lot of these layers off of my authentic self, which my authentic self also is where my soul is, my higher self is, my intuition is the most clear. It's the most pristine. It's my home frequency. So then, like, my all of those things really started to flourish as a result of opting out of people pleasing, which I didn't know was opting into self love, opting further into coming to know myself beyond my personality and my soul self, my authentic self, my higher self, and then ultimately God. So as that happened, it was more of like a remembrance. It was more of like a, the David statue analogies. Like, I just took away everything that wasn't David.
Yeah.
And because we're all intuitive anyway, because we're all on some level sensitive and empathic, and we're all plugged in and connected in some way, the distortion, the disturbance, as it cleared the mirror, then my intuition was just stronger. It was more apparent. It was more striking to me.
Yeah.
And then my sensitivity started to work more in my favor versus being overwhelmed by being empathic and sensitive, because part of the overwhelm wasn't just because I can feel people and can feel things. It's because I was doing all the people pleasing.
Exactly.
Right.
You're
So it's like I'm
giving you all my energy. You didn't even ask for it.
Right. Exactly. And so then my sensitivity started becoming more of a superpower, and it just kept getting more and more amped up. Same thing with my intuition. And then the choice to act on it, right, which wasn't always easy. It required faith, required courage, and continued, like, what felt like deaths and rebirths. The choice to act on it was almost like grounding in the circuit. So it's like my quote unquote higher self, which is my soul self, my authentic self, started to becoming more me. It's like divine and human merging. And then it became more of a way of being, right? And then as these different, like the self-love, all these things that what I was calling bonuses because I wasn't seeking them, then I started actively seeking them because I realized, for example, that being my authentic self, speaking my truth, living my truth, I realized that that was self-love in action. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'm going to double down on these revelations, these insights, these results that came from opting out of people pleasing. And then I started actively, consciously pursuing these things, my connection to spirit, the development of my intuition, self love, and how that kept expanding. So, yeah.
Wow. Um, okay, one last question maybe. I'm like that's always the last thing I'll say, and then it ends up being like 10 more questions. But on this part, before we circle back to the amazing manifestation story, what advice would you give for people who are just starting to like shed the shoulds and stop the people pleasing? Because for some people, I know it can be so like scary, or they're like, to take that initial step to use their voice for the first time, to like put a boundary up. So like, what were some of the tools or things that you did while that intuition was so like new and fragile and you were just starting to take those first like 2 or 3 steps?
Yeah, I treated it as if my life depended on it, and I also treated it as it was sacred, right? And one of the ways that I put that into action was, I, I kind of drew my energy in a way, and this I guess would be similar to having a boundary, but then I would share my innermost space and my innermost heart with places and spaces and people that were trustworthy, that could match and reflect back to me and hold me in the same way that I started beholding myself. I also started just attracting more people like that.
Yeah.
And so that was one way of strengthening it, right? It's just like treating it like this precious diamond, both my heart and my spirit, and I relate to those in different ways, but equally as important, both my heart and my spirit. Um, and then I integrated that into my life repeatedly over and over again to the best of my ability. And by that, I mean that like in my relationships or in my business, any part of the structure of my business or relationship that predictably, or that wasn't going to accommodate for this development,
Yeah.
I redesigned it so that it would accommodate. Because when we don't do that, then we're predictably going to create tension. It's like when you go do a medicine ceremony, or you have a moment of enlightenment, or you go on vacation and somehow you get outside of the box of yourself, right? It's really important to, and this is a very practical, tactical way of thinking about it, to integrate now when you come back into your home, your community, your core relationship, your business, because not everyone gets the updated memo of this is the new you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not, people don't like, oh, hey, we get it. Some people, which are usually your best friends, right, get the memo spiritually, immediately. They're like, cool. Right?
Totally.
But these other parts of your structure become like anchors. And so to tie this into your question, as I was having this expansion of heart and this expansion of soul, I realized this by the friction happening, by people not getting the memo, by like, going into a particular role that I'd been playing and like immediately feeling like I'm getting knocked back into my past.
Yeah.
From the recognition of that, I was like, oh, I need to own this thing that I'm newly valuing, my self-love practice, my speaking of my truth. I first need to own it.
Yeah.
Right. And not like apologetically be like, hey guys, it's permission to be me.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like we show other people how to treat us kind of thing.
Right. So that was the first insight. I was like, because I did try to just come back and be like, hey, here's the new me. And it didn't necessarily land in all the places I wanted to as powerfully, as celebratory. But then I had the realization, I was like, oh, because I'm being apologetic, which means I'm sending a mixed signal. I'm asking people, please accept me. So I realized the ownership piece and how I was influencing the mirror of my reality and how people are treating me. And then I went to the design, like, do I need to restructure this process or role that I have in my business? Do I need to let my partner know this is the new me and this is what it means to me, and get into a space of intimacy and like invite my partner to meet me in the new me and to honor and to co-create, rather than just assuming that, oh yeah, it'll be fine, because maybe not.
Yeah.
I mean, it can
things can fall away and people can fall away,
right? And when people feel you different, it can, even on an unconscious level, it can feel threatening. Not necessarily threatening like life threatening, but threatening like, oh, you feel different, am I losing love? And they may, even people who love you deeply might innocently not try to hold you back, but try to hold you to who you were, because so that they feel safe.
Right. Because that's what's consistent and known for them.
Exactly. So I continuing to loop back to your question, I was very intentional and a bit methodical about integrating my heart and soul expansion. And I've continued to do that as I've expanded whatever it is that's expanding me, to like think about, okay, what do I need to, on a practical level, need to change? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to add? You know, and what needs to be spoken, what needs to be owned, so that my world, especially the core places, because they become anchors of who you are.
Yeah.
Your core relationship or relationships, and if you have a business, your business, because those things can like hold you. You could hold yourself to the past version of you, and if your soul's expanded, if you're on to bigger, better, faster, stronger, new horizons, and you've expanded, and you collide with your past like that, that's a recipe for predictable tension
Yeah.
and challenges.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love what you say about, we can get these glimpses of that expanded version of ourself in like a ceremony or a peak
Right.
experience. And it can also, and then it's like the real work or the real ceremony begins after the ceremony, as they
Right.
say, where it's like we do have to kind of be like, okay, if I do want to be this vision, like how does this person show up? What are they communicating? What kind of space are they making for themselves? Because if we go back to our reality, it's like a hermit crab that's just like left
Right.
a shell and yeah, then tries to go back, but it no longer fits and
Right.
can make people like even more depressed or confused unless they're like, okay, now is the time to walk the fire and to actually like put my word to action to like step
Totally.
into this.
And even like, and this will tie into the story that I'm going to tell about the exit festival.
I love it. If you guys are
Stand by.
worried about us not or leaving a loop unclosed, have no fear. We are going to circle back.
We got two master trackers here. We're tracking like
Yeah.
ninjas. So going back maybe 2 chapters before the exit festival, one of the things that came to me through inspiration, through revelation, through an inner calling, was this new identity, if you will. It wasn't an identity yet. It was just an essence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been speaking for many years on stage, on podcasts, in person, and online, right? And I have been an artist for many years as well. Then I started like progressing with my artistry, doing more spoken word, doing freestyle hip hop. I'm a dancer, I'm a magician, all these different things. And I started expressing myself more as an artist. And what I recognized a couple of years ago is that there was this desire, and then I recognized it as a calling, to bring together these different dimensions of myself into one identity or one experience. And so I'm like, it's not a speaker anymore. I'm like a transformational entertainer. I'm like part stand-up comedian, part magician, part meditation teacher, part. I was like, oh, that doesn't exist. It exists inside me. And and this is getting an inside scoop on how I create reality or create myself.
Oh my
sometimes.
Gosh, please. You guys heard it here first.
So when I observe that through the life, the aliveness, through the passion, through the inspiration that's coming through me expressing in a certain way, whether it's just with me and you, we could be, just as an example, hanging out for like 3 hours, and I'm like, wow, I'm like, there's the comedy, there's this. And then I'm like, what would it be like for that to be on stage? I'm like, oh, and that's why then I started thinking about myself as a transformational entertainer, as a generational voice. It's also as this platform to bring together these different gifts into the same version of myself and to the world stage. And then I recognized I had been called for that. So as I then started to intend it and imagine it and make plans for it, like I'm going to do this thing and work my way through time to get there. And this is the secret. It's not a secret, but it is kind of a secret.
Okay. We're ready.
I do my best to bring that essence that's in the picture. The picture would be like world class. I'm traveling around the world on stages at conferences, and I'm bringing this experience to the stage. A transformational entertainer, a global generational voice. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to put more plans into the timeline in the future for that. More containers, but how can I bring that into my life right now? Because it's resonating, it's vibrating, it's alive inside me now. And
Yeah.
that's a state of being. And state of being is not bound in form. It's not bound by form. It's not bound in time, which means that we have the capacity to be that now.
Yeah.
And so that's the internal alchemy that I work with when I'm creating something. So I just like, yes, because I feel the calling to be that and to bring this into the world now. And so rather than getting ahead of myself, or worse, putting it all in the future and being like, hold on, soul, hold on, God, I haven't built the business yet, so I can't offer this to the world now. I'm like, no, it's here now. It's unfolding through time in terms of how it develops, but I can be this, I can give this. So then I'll ask a practical question like, how can I express this now? But because I'm saying yes, because I'm available, because I'm listening, and because I've decided I'm going to the best of my ability, let it express itself now, wherever it wants to.
Versus like, oh, when then?
When then.
Yeah.
Off here in the future and all these, containers or ideas that I have. So I'm saying that to say that this is going to tie into the story.
Yeah.
Right. And how even when I think about the other night, I wasn't thinking about this till now because I'm just living it, is I did the spoken word piece, but I'm like, I also did a transmission, like as a speaker. There's also comedy in there. I'm like, oh, I'm living the thing.
I know. I was listening back to the episode, and I was like, he kind of did like a full stand-up bit before his spoken word with the yerba mate thing.
Right. But that's the feeling that I was having, that I was calling transformational entertainer, like inside me. And like, it's a more multidimensional, more non-linear expression of an offering of my gift to the world. So without even thinking about like, oh, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, I look back at that moment and I was like, oh, wow, it's happening. But that's been happening ever since I made the decision that is who I am, and that's who I'm planning to be.
Yeah.
And so then I started drawing, and then at mycelium, that was this, I really could feel it there.
Yeah.
Right. That set wasn't even planned. I was planned to do something else earlier
during the day
that got rescheduled due to unforeseen circumstances. And so that got mocked up. Even the band, I hadn't played with any of those guys before. Like each one of them came together. They hadn't played together before.
That's crazy. Just to paint a picture for the listeners, I was like at dinner at Mycelium, the festival. There's like 300 people there. We're all sitting in this beautiful meadow, and Oren comes out, and there's like 3 or 4 other guys, like some playing drums, some are like saying or like echoing your words. It was like a whole vibe.
And Ngoni, labial, and then Ngoni, I think it's how you say it. Yeah.
And it was crazy because like not only was a spoken word so profound, but I was like, I thought you guys were like a whole traveling troupe or something. And I was like, I knew that you were like the one doing the spoken word. So when I messaged you, like I even had in my mind, I'm like, oh, the whole like guy gang can come. Because I just thought like you guys were so dialed that I was like, they must do this all over LA.
No, but that element there, right? So there's the transformational entertainer that manifested that night, and continued with powerful stuff. But the other part of my excitement and my soul's expansion is like, I want to play with other people that can read the rhythms of the moment and improv and create something exceptional spontaneously. And I had the thought, like, even like a band that never played together, that wasn't my plan going into it. But when my plan fell apart and then I connected with one guy that plays the drums, I'm like, yeah, I'm reassembling this thing in real time. I was like, oh, I was thinking maybe like a drummer or something like that would be great. I said that to my friend Samir, and he's like, oh, you should ask so-and-so. And he's like, oh, I'd be happy to play drums too. Wow. And then went from that. I was like, oh, and then maybe with the string instrument, somebody could, oh, Levy. I asked him, he was like, I'm in. Literally, that came together like that. And then almost in hindsight, I recognized, I'm like, I created this too.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be in a moment where like everyone's tuned in, tapped in, and listening, but in a group. And it's like, we have to really be connected in this state of unity because that's also part of my message and what I teach.
Yeah.
And then make something exceptional. So all of that you were seeing for the first time with the whole entire group.
Wow. That's so cool. And I love also just the idea of like it got rescheduled. It wasn't going to plan, but it's like answering the call of kind of trusting that it's happening for
Right.
you. And you're like, okay, well, if it didn't go to plan, it's probably because like something even better is
Right.
supposed to unfold and then like taking the actions to like actually make it so,
Yes.
which is, yeah, so cool. I love that.
All right.
And then circling back.
Circling back, we got the bridge
The
on
bridge,
deck somewhere
yeah, the
in the
bridge is
story.
on deck. But yeah, just so much of what you say like resonates so deeply. Oh, the one other thing I was gonna double click on in this past like story and what you just shared about yourself is like I am a manifestor generator, so I like have my hands in so many different things, and in I was a founder, I was a journalist, I love leading meditations, I play guitar, I'm a coach, like,
Right.
and for the longest time, I felt like it was weaponized against me.
Me
And
too.
like when I was a founder, I was like raising money and they're like, oh, you teach yoga too? Like, are you distracted? Like,
Right.
and so I
Right.
felt like I actually had to quiet parts of myself, or like whenever I'd play a song, I'd be like, oh, but I'm not like a official musician or anything. And it was like really sad. I felt like parts of me were like fragmented and it did damage my self-trust. And it's almost,
Same here.
yeah, it's like until recently, like you said, with like giving myself full permission and like, yes, and like I can be a
Right.
coach and I can release songs on Spotify and like letting both be true at the same time. But it's like if we want other people to see us that way, like we first, like you were saying, have to see ourselves that way and give ourselves the permission to do that.
Totally. And I think that's one of the keys is the permission. It's such a big piece because especially if you're bringing something through from your unique essence, something that hasn't been seen before, hasn't been done before, that may not even have a title or a reference point or a genre, especially then, the first permission is you.
Yeah.
Like you give yourself permission. And it's interesting how the world is also responding to how much you are just fully owning it or how apologetic you are in like, hey, or you're looking for permission, but you are, especially if it's unique, you are the permission, you are the prototype, you are the role model. And that can be scary. It can be lonely, seeking validation and somebody to validate an idea. And, just a practical example of like, I know for me, and this is something that some people might think if they're like, let's say an artist and an entrepreneur or an artist and a high level business coach, right? Is, there may be a conflict of identity that says, oh, I can't really express so much of my artist side or my wild side because I'm a professional business coach. But the irony is, especially if you want soulmate clients, that means they know your soul,
Yeah.
right? Is not only does it not work against you, is what I realized, meaning like, okay, I do freestyle rap, but then I'm working with high level CEO executives of Fortune 100 companies. Not only does it not work against me, which would be the belief, the thought that I had and that many people have, because it's quote unquote, what does professional mean? But I realized that especially for like on a high level, like soulmate, like cream of the, like the ideal client already knows you on a soul level. So it actually works in your favor.
Yeah.
So rather than try to like compartmentalize myself and be like, oh, because I am a business coach or I call myself a business oracle, rather than be like, oh, well, people are paying me hundreds of thousands of dollars here, so that needs to look this way. It's like, oh no, at even subconsciously at the core, they're attracted to me, yes, for my capacity to practically help them, but they're specifically uniquely attracted to me because of the unique soul that I am. And so I'm not going to separate those things. I'm going to harmonize them. And so like I've sent freestyle rap videos to clients and it's like, that's, even if they don't listen to rap music, they're like, that's why you're my coach.
Yeah.
That is why you're my person.
Totally. And they end up seeing like their potential of what they want to express or other
Exactly.
untapped parts of themselves. And that I love that so much. And it was totally my experience as a coach as well, because I was founder, and then my startup failed, but then I through my whole self-development journey ended up coaching. And at first I was like nervous to share it on Instagram because I went to Harvard undergrad, and a lot of my classmates were like, Forbes 30 under 30, and running amazing startups or just like really high up in their like corporate or tech worlds. And like before my startup, I spent a year in England just like teaching yoga and playing guitar. I called it my Renaissance year. My mom calls it my my gap in my LinkedIn. And I was hesitant at first to share that I was like coaching, because I'm like, well, they know that I like had a startup. Well, they think like, who is she to do this? Is she a failed startup founder? And I ended up writing a post on that. Actually, like Ashlyn, who founded Mycelium and we're both friends with, gave me the like courage to, really put myself out there in this way with coaching. But it was like the first sentence or something was like, who is she to think she's a coach, she has a failed startup, and I like wrote this whole caption around it, and like kind of like turned my shame into this superpower. And then just like you were saying with your soulmate clients, like my first clients were former Harvard acquaintances who were like, I admired so much how you like didn't go this traditional route and played guitar in Europe, and I want to learn how to be more creative. And it was just such like a cosmic joke, because I was like, that's so funny that I was afraid of it, but it's like as soon as I owned it and like owned the story around it, like the people came, versus if I had like kept it like closeted or like felt bad or looked down on myself for like not succeeding at my startup.
Totally. And I I'll go down the rabbit hole for a minute here.
We love a good rabbit hole.
Yeah. What's that?
We love a good rabbit hole.
We love a good rabbit hole. So, okay, on this level, it's like, all right, you could say, that I'm like a multi-hyphenate Renaissance man archetype, modern day polymath, man of many interests, many talents, many passions. And so there's that. And so there's some accuracy to that.
Yeah.
I think that the other reason that this is more universal is because of human evolution. And take away all the conditioning, all of the shenanigans of the mind, the fear, the judgment. At a core level, I believe, I intuitively know that the human soul, people want to just be themselves. And people left to their true, authentic, natural soul self, everybody has multiple expressions and multiple flavors to them, even if that doesn't mean multiple roles in the world. I think it's actually more universal and innate to the human spirit. The desire to be thyself, to know thyself, and to fully express thyself is universal. So not only is my message, my demonstration, being a permission and an inspiration to those who are multifaceted, multi-talented like me, and like, ooh, wow, you just gave me permission. It's universal. Yeah. It's unity. It's uniting parts of ourself, as opposed to separating or compartmentalizing. I've got my business side, I've got my spiritual side, I got my funny side, I got my side, and it's like, these must be different, right? And now they may be, I think the usefulness could be compartmentalizing our focus, so for example, if I'm doing in a board meeting with my CEO and my team, then maybe I'm not doing lap dances because I'm trying to do everything at the same time.
Yeah.
But the lap dancer in me doesn't need to be hidden, like the essence. Yeah. It may not get expressed, but like does that make sense?
Totally.
It's like, it's that our internal world, wherever it's been compartmentalized through conditioning, through fear, through judgment, through shame, our soul will set up the soul dojo to come into greater unity, even if we don't express that outwardly in a multifaceted way like someone like myself does.
Yeah.
It is something I feel like is happening universally, and you can see it trending even in society. I've been tracking this for like 20 years. More and more things, even businesses, like we do this and this and this. Yeah. It's like, the one-stop shop, things are coming more into unity and harmony.
Yeah.
So are we.
I just thought of like Michelin tires and like the Michelin star restaurants. You're like, You're like, how are these related? And that somehow they are.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Five-star
that.
dinner, pull your car in the back, we'll change up your tires. Like everybody's winning.
Everyone's winning. But it's so true. It is like kind of when we feel like unified on the inside, then we don't come off as fragmented on the outside, even
Right.
if we're just like expressing certain channels. But one other thing I'm curious about on this particular topic, before our long-awaited circle back to the
Yes.
story that we
We're
promised everyone,
tracking.
is and I've kind of struggled with this at various points in time as well, but like how to know when to nourish or focus on these different interests. Like, for example, I also have written 2 screenplays, and like I revise them once every other full moon, and they've
Uh-huh.
kind of just been like sitting there, and then I have these songs. And so it's like kind of like, how do you manage that of like when you really like nurture these different parts of yourself, and how you remain in
Right.
balance without feeling like there are a bunch of open loops in your head?
That's a fantastic question. I'll use the festival story as an example because
Great.
this is somewhere. We're gonna fast forward a moment in chapter 3. Yeah, essentially for me, like as an artist, I went from, you know, expressing myself as an artist just in my life, writing, doing spoken word poetry, freestyle rapping, these different things. And then I started doing more content and I started sharing it online because I thought it'd be interesting and just kind of express myself and let my audience know these are different facets of me. And for me, one of the distinctions is in when I recognize that something is a calling and when I recognize something, when something wants to live on or continue on versus like an expression that comes to me, that the fulfillment of that expression, let's just say it's a poem, or if I'm, practicing the guitar, I pick it up, um, is complete onto itself. I've learned to distinguish the difference between the completion now or something that still has a calling. It still wants to live on. It's still calling me into it.
Right.
And with my artistry, where I'm at with that, which led me to the 40,000 people,
Yes.
keep circling back, is prior to that happening, I had been called on stage and I'm like, it was spontaneous. And I'm like, okay, this is me being an artist. Being fulfilled. I'm expressing myself and I'm sharing it with the world, which was also distinct. It was like, oh, and share it with the world. Not because I should, but because I recognized that I was being called to share it with the world. And then I was getting that reflected and confirmed back to me. Not that you need that as an artist, right? To be
Right.
clear. Anyway, what happened after I was in that spontaneous performance is I recognized that, oh, there is a higher purpose to this. Like beyond, there's already enough of a purpose as an artist to bring the art to life, period. If I
Mhm.
never shared it with the world, but I recognize that the calling to bring something into the world, and that's where I turned up the heat and I was like, okay, yes, I'm here for it. So I recognize that distinction as a calling is one way that I recognize it,
Mhm.
and I recognize it in connection to my soul, even in the development of my artistry. If I'm like, when I do a lot of freestyling, I freestyle rap, I can freestyle spoken word poems. I primarily freestyle, but even when I started writing more in a more traditional sense of like, write down a verse, write another one, tie them together, massage it, polish it, play with it, and then make it into something. I wasn't really doing that, but like a couple of years ago, I started doing it in notepads. So, right, it's completely just organic. It's still organic, but what I recognize is, oh, I'm being called to develop this skill of writing.
Yeah.
And then that's when I like double down on it. That's when I take it more seriously, not being serious, but take it more seriously, not because I should, because I recognize the way the energy is moving through me, the way it's calling me, the inspiration is going towards that. And then I say yes to that. Does that answer the question? Like, that's how
Yeah.
I make these distinctions. And other things are like, oh, okay, that's not meant to be a business. That's not meant to be take it any further. It's complete right now.
And so what is like for something that is complete? It's like just a feeling that you get.
It's just a feeling. It's
Yeah.
just a feeling of like, oh, that, and I might do the thing again 2 days
From now.
after, but in that moment it just feels like, oh, no, that was that. Like I picked up Levi, the guy, his Ngoni, the
Oh,
other night,
cool.
that gorgeous stringed instrument.
Yeah.
And he was like, try it out. And everybody's watching me. And I was just like, kind of like shyly, but like I was down, I was like, started just strumming it. And he's like, oh, wow, you're a natural. And I was like, oh shit, you're right.
I
But
love that.
that's an example of like in that moment, who knows? Maybe it was a seedling that gets watered 3 months from now. But in that moment, it was like, oh, that experience was complete unto itself. It wasn't like, ooh, I should go buy a Nagoni and start practicing.
Right. That makes total sense. And I think the interesting thing and something that you capture so beautifully is this concept of not putting pressure on ourselves in our
Yes.
creative process or as
Yes.
an artist. Cause it's like, I read Osho's book on creativity once, and it was like having to view ourselves like, yeah, as the empty vessel.
Right.
When whether it gets praise or it flops, it's like your whole thing is like,
That's the
you are
mastery
the
to me.
messenger. And it can be like the hardest thing because I know a ton of musicians and other types of performers in LA, and it's like their livelihood. And so it's like, how do you recommend to people to like stay in that state of just complete channeling?
Ooh, that's such a good question. And I am qualified to answer it, but I'll preface that by saying that I'm a unique case because as an artist, the way that I came into really like launched into my artistry and kind of like, hey, I'm going all the way with this, whatever that means to
Yeah.
me. I had already connected my artistry to my calling so much that I have this kind of naive innocence that works in my favor, this detachment energy.
Yeah.
And so as I'm becoming more official and like I'm a professional now, I'm a world-class spoken word poet,
Yeah.
I'm speaking on massive stages, it's impacting my career, it's a thing.
Yeah.
I it's that's one thing that's helped me is the purity of how my devotion and inspiration what it's anchored in. But and don't get me wrong, it's still been challenging in its own ways for sure. But I do have a lot to share in answer to your question, and essentially, just reverse engineering myself a little bit. It's like if you can anchor your devotion or build your devotion in the simplest point, and I say like the calling,
Uh-huh.
right? The obedience to spirit being the primary thing.
Yeah.
Anchor yourself, double down, put your chips in on the simplest primary importance in the thing, then
Yep.
that can be a stable foundation. So like as a speaker, I did the same thing. I realized that the core thing, yes, I'm articulate and the things I speak about have their own relevance and importance and there's all these value points, but I realized early on a revelation and then I doubled down on it. I realized that the core essence of this is like I just decided to get up on stage, to be willing to get up on stage, to bare my heart, to bare my soul, to be my authentic soul in front of the world. And that's the primary thing, not how good of a talk I did. So I
Yeah.
was like, that's the type of speaker that I'm going to be. So it helped me over the years not get lost in the sauce of like trying to be an amazing speaker. Because I'm like, but this is the calling. This is the roots of it, is just
Yeah.
me being me. And so I doubled down on that. And it's the same thing as an artist. And it
Totally.
was easier for me to do this as an artist because I was already like I didn't have an ambition to be an artist. I just recognized that I am an artist.
Yeah.
But what I would say as advice is to find the purity, find the place of innocence, find the obedience to the creative muse, the obedience to the creative spirit itself, and let that be your primary devotion, your primary importance, and align and design your decisions in your world around that.
Yeah.
That's my advice, and I did that even with this 40,000 people, which was alluring. I had my moments of challenge, like this is big,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But it's like, but what does that mean? That's the part. That's the trap. That's the thing that can take you from your soul's channel, that God channel, that like the actual the purest essence of the art, and then start to taint it, distort it, pollute it, pervert it, is that something else, whether it's your audience, whether it's the fans, whether it's the money, all things that could be relevant and important. But the thing is to have those be important, but in perspective.
Yeah.
That to me is the game changer of it all. It's like, this is first importance. These things are secondary.
Right.
The hierarchy of importance, I would say, is one way to I would synthesize the answer to that question. So when I was speaking on stage, it was like I would journey through the complexity of things, like the bigness of things, and this is going into the story again.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Everyone's like, this is the most like blue balls everyone's had for a story.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's going to be powerful if you guys haven't guessed.
Or the bust all over you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would go back to as the primary preparation is the remembrance, like the simplicity. 40,000 people. This is spirit now, because that's what I want to anchor myself in. That's where my devotion is. It's to the art itself. It's to the channel itself. It's to the mission itself. It's to the message itself. Primarily, secondarily, not instead of. It's, of course, I want to do a great performance. Of course, I want to be a brilliant artist. Of course, I want to move and inspire people. But I recognize, what is it that actually moves and inspires people the most? It's these fundamental things of obedience to the channel, the rawness and the purity of the delivery of the message. It's the fearlessness in being real. I'm like, that's the sauce.
Yeah.
So my allegiance is to the sauce, not to the effect, not to all the other moving pieces around it. So I would remind myself anytime I felt pressure or any pressure, I'd be like, where's this pressure coming from? Oh, it's coming from the mind and its agenda, which is for everybody to love this, right?
Yeah, totally.
Do you know what I mean? I'm like, the pressure's coming from the imaginary bigness of it versus, it was big. That's a shitload of people. It was insane.
Yeah.
But I knew that, what does bigness imply, though? To the mind, to the identity that's like, we can't fuck this up. We're going to be this. We're going to do that. It implies, because it's big, you need to make sure that you do this, or make sure you do that, or make sure it's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, but that's not the actual bigness. The bigness is in me. It's the spirit that's moving me. I'm like, that's the sauce.
Yeah.
So that's the bigness. And as soon as I remind myself of that, it gets simple again. And then the pressure goes away, because I'm like, oh, it's the mind that's generating the pressure. It's the attachment to the idea, because then you have these separate agendas. Not necessarily desires like, hey, I'd love for this to be great. I'd love for it to boost my career, but agendas. And when you create a split between yourself and the soul of the performance and the essence of the actual calling, that's what creates the tension. Most of the tension and the pressure is coming from, the difference between who we really are and who we think we should be. What the thing is and what we
make it out to be, meaning we ascribe it versus like why we're on there to channel. And I love that, actually, because I feel like it calls back to like two other points in the podcast, like one about the people pleasing,
right?
And like what will other people think, or what should I do,
right?
And then that taking away from our true essence. And then also with, like you were saying, with like the soulmate clients, it's like the more we are like the living, breathing version of our own client zero, the more people are like, oh, I see that they live their brand. Like, that's what I want, versus like being a stressed out coach trying to get clients.
And that's why I use the word secret sometimes in air quotes, because once you recognize it or remember it, or you're in the revelation, or you're in you're living in what I'm saying, it's shockingly obvious.
Yeah.
When you forget, it's shockingly not obvious. And that's why it seems like it's hidden in plain sight. It's like so basic that it eludes a lot of people, maybe most of the time. And to just summarize one iteration of what I mean by basic is, be true to thyself.
Yeah.
Be true to the calling that is inside you. Be true to the mission. Give your full devotion to that, whether you're an artist and you're in the industry or you're not in the industry. You know what I mean? Whether you're on stage in front of 40,000 people or on stage in front of 4 people, it's actually profoundly simple. And it is a kind of secret in the sense, and it's so ironic that the very thing that the ego is afraid of is going to discredit it, make people not like us, is actually the things that make you a hero.
Yeah.
It's like if you want to be a hero, so to speak, or a star, then don't try to be a hero. Don't try to be a star. And your ideas of that, it's like there's some very fundamental, simple things that everybody innately desires, yearns for, and wants, and it's to be themselves.
Yeah.
Even if they don't say that. And so if you are crazy enough, if you're brave enough to be yourself, or to be yourself on the world stage, then it's not a trick, but it almost seems like it is, because it's like, no, that's
how they got here. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. I have one anecdotal story to that. And then I think it'll segue perfectly into your story.
Yes.
But I remember in Houston when I watched the Eras tour, I flew back to Houston to see it. And I'd grown up listening to Taylor Swift because she's like 1 year older than me. And I just remember being like, holy shit, she's made an empire from like being herself, writing songs about like guys who have broken her heart. And now she gets to do this whole like 3-hour long celebration of like her life in front of other people. I was like, she's cracked the code, and like it's so magnetic because I feel like people just feel the authenticity. They feel like she's their best friend. And it's funny because when I was young, and still now, like my childhood dream is to like be a pop star, and like some iteration of that. And I wasn't performing guitar a lot last year. Like I would perform when I hosted my own events, but I'm not like actively being booked as a musician. If anyone's listening, putting it out there, opener for Taylor's next tour. But yeah, so then I decided, similar to what you were saying, of like I needed to just show myself that I can do this. So I created a new TikTok handle, and I called it 30 Days to Stadium, as in like 30 days to playing my own stadium tour. And each day I would post a song. I did it in chronological order, and telling like the journey of like me growing up through these songs and like what each song was about. And then I'd play it. And I was like, even if like nobody sees it, like I want this to be like a record for like inner Meredith, like to know that like I put them out there as this like complete project, or maybe my kids or grandkids will see it one day. But it was just like that same thing of like, okay, even if I get like 0 followers, I'm just gonna post every day for 30 days. And I did it. I took my guitar to my 10-year college reunion, I took it to a retreat, it like traveled everywhere with me those 30 days.
Yeah, I love that. Even that phrase, even if no one ever sees this, it just points right to the heart of what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you can't fake this. It's not a trick, and you can't fake it, because to me, it's like in that lane of even if no one sees this, if I answer this calling, if I give life to this inspiration, if I give voice, give form, give expression to this inspiration, then my soul is fulfilled.
Yeah.
There's something fulfilled. It's life-giving. You've already won.
Yeah.
You've already actually won. That is worth your time.
Yeah.
Period. And then the bonus of that is like that, and this is like kind of like closer to what the law of attraction actually is. Life reflects back to you more of what you already are. And then manifestation, whether that's opportunity, you know what I mean, the expansion of your brand or your profile, or you blow up and you become a rock star or whatever, that, and if you're thinking about like a blueprint, that's one of the fastest ways to accelerate your pathway towards even those tangible things, is to start, and this is the irony, with even if no one ever saw this. I'm doing this with or without anyone. That's the obedience to the channel, and it's part of the secret sauce of success that I think is less understood, because as soon as you bring the word or the idea of success in, as soon as you start bringing the goals in, and the fans and the managers and the this and the status and the money and the recognition and the fame and blah, 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 for most people, to some degree, the ego captain goes, now I'll take over. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this is important now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
And then all of a sudden you're like, ah.
So if you can maintain that purity, that innocence, that obedience to the art, to the mission, to the calling, to the voice, as you are becoming more visible, and this is a message for all artists and entrepreneurs and visionaries, but especially those who are visible. Um, I realized that probably a decade or more ago that, oh, this is going to be part of my learning, and my invitation is, as I become more visible, as I'm becoming, more into the world, because I just had a sense that that's part
What's
of what's
happening?
happening for me.
Yeah.
Which is another thing. I was like, I'm not going to try to be humble because I don't have an aspiration to be famous.
Right.
I'm also not going to, because one obvious expression of arrogance is, look at me, I want to be famous because I think it's going to make me something.
Right.
But a less obvious shadow side of that is, don't look at me, and saying no to the calling. So I recognized years ago, like, I don't have an aspiration to be a famous anything in that sense. But I recognize that the way my energy moves, the way it manifests, the way people respond to it, the way that I'm being called is something like that.
Yeah.
Call it famous, call it celebrity, call it nothing.
Yeah.
So it's just as arrogant as another device of the ego to be like, no, God, I'm not going to be that. I don't want to be that. So I'm like, whatever it is, call it whatever you want. There's something here.
Yeah.
Right. So I say yes to it. And hopefully you're tracking the bookmark that I made.
Yes, you say yes.
Yes. Okay. I said yes to that. But I was making another point, and that was a side point. What was the story that I was just telling?
Yeah, just about not just not having like any ego around it, and just being like devotion to
right. I recognize that then the game became, because I am being called into the world, it was another part of my dojo, my soul's expansion, and as an artist and a thought leader in the world, a generational voice is like, can I maintain the purity and the innocence when the stakes seem to get higher, when the audience gets bigger? And the answer, of course, is yes. I had already decided that, but I recognized, it's like, oh, that's another level of challenge, is now that people go, oh, you are funny. Oh, you have a label now. Oh, you're a comedian, right? Yeah. And then you start creating these agreements with the world, with your fans, and you're like, this is who I am. And you now contain it. Can you contain it without containing it? Can you bring it forth and at higher and higher levels and more visibility, and still remain true to the essence of it? And actually, I won't even tell this whole story, but
yeah,
one of my clients who's a singer-songwriter, I sat in on a songwriting session one day, post-session, and I started helping out, and it was really impactful. And he was like, wow, I'm so glad that you hung around. And he said, you remind me of Rick Rubin. And I was like, I'd heard of Rick Rubin,
cool.
But I didn't know much about him. I didn't realize he was like a legend as a music producer. And I was like, really? And he told me this story about Rick Rubin and Johnny Cash, and how he kind of revived him. He thought he had no epic music left in him, and they created like a masterpiece, and this whole thing. I was so moved by that story. I deep dive, binge watched like 3 or 4 Rick Rubin podcasts, and I was like, I am like Rick Rubin in a way. I'm like kindred soul. And I thought to myself, I was like, I would love to meet Rick. I'm going to meet Rick one day, just like in a childlike enthusiasm. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to meet Rick Rubin. And here's what we would talk about. And one of the things I wanted to talk with him about is because I work with very visible people who are like superstars in their field, but he's working with like icons who billions of people, know. And I was like, I knew we would relate on the subject. So I literally started having conversations in my mind with him that were so satisfying and fulfilling that they were complete unto themselves. Anyway, long story short,
wow.
Like a year later, I'm in my driveway. My girlfriend at the time pulls up. I was waiting on an Uber. I was like, oh, hey, babe, giving her a hug. And out of the corner of my eye, I see, if I would have blinked, I would have missed it. Like in my periphery, I see a man walking down the street in our neighborhood, which was like a residential neighborhood in the Palisades. And I just saw this long gray beard. And while I was talking to her, I turned and I looked. And I said, Rick? And he turns and looks, and it was Rick. Whoa. And I walk over to him.
Oh my God.
I say hello, introduce myself, got past that moment of just like, oh, he's just saying hi. I start walking over to him, not like fanboy, but just excited though. And I introduced myself, and then he was about to say goodbye again. And then I asked him, I said, if you don't mind me asking, what is this season of your life about on a soul level? What is your soul expanding into right now? What's unfolding in the unknown in this like next stage of your development?
Yeah.
And he unfolded his arms and he was like, that's a great question. And then we had the conversation about the very thing that I'm talking about, and about artists maintaining their purity and their innocence and all of these different things.
Whoa.
As they get bigger, it manifested. And I'm just gonna fast forward to say that I ran into him again 2 weeks later at a
No way.
Bulletproof content conference for like a minute. He's like, "Oh, Oren, hey." We talked for like maybe a minute and a half. We were on our way. I was like, okay. And then fast forward maybe like 2 years later, I was at a critical moment in my life of transition, and I went out to the beach. And when I'm in moments like that, sometimes people that symbolize certain things, in particular in the area of collaboration, I want to collaborate with other like creative geniuses that are operating on a certain frequency and a certain level that inspire and enliven me.
Yeah.
You know, and it was one of those chapters in my life. And I went out to the beach in Hawaii. I was on the North Shore of Hawaii, just there for a brief period of time, or I'd just gotten there. I'd been there for like a week. And as I was on my way out to the beach, I thought about like, who are some examples of creatives that I feel really deeply connected to on a soul level that I would love to collaborate with? And I said, Rick Rubin. And I started remembering the Rick Rubin story and how I ran into him and how it was miraculous and everything that unfolded in that conversation. And then the other person I thought about was Donald Glover, Childish Gambino. So there's two figures that are creative, multi-talented, are like legends to me in their own way.
No way.
So check this out. I go out to the beach. I'm meditating and just watching the ocean and just sitting there for like 15 minutes. I was like, okay, I'm done. I walk back to my car, and as I'm about to walk into the parking lot, again, in my peripheral vision, if I'd have blinked, I would have missed it. I just like my head, like my body was like in the flow. It just turned and it was like Rick.
No way. In Hawaii.
In Hawaii.
Oh my God.
And I had just been thinking about him and meditating on him and being like, Rick, yes, Rick Rubin, and all the memories were coming up, and literally he manifests, and it's like, wow, here we are again. He was like, here we are again. And by the way, the first time that happened, I told him the story, the synchronicity, and I literally called you out of the ether, and he was like, yeah, that's the way it works. So then when I saw him again,
he's like, duh.
When I saw him again, he was like, yeah, here we are again.
Just like totally.
Just, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the third time that I ran into Rick Rubin. Anyway, and just another example, but to tie it back and close that thread, this is what we were conversating about, was the ability to maintain that connection between you, your soul, God, the artist, the creative muse, whatever you want to say, especially as you're getting visible and you have millions of people watching you. And, I could say more about that, but that's the completion of that thread and a magical story to go along with that, and that getting confirmed and like literally materializing. And I'm sitting here talking to Rick Rubin, having a conversation that I had with him in my head.
I love that so much. And it is so much of like, kind of just like trusting, like you were saying, the synchronicities. And to close two loops on that from my end, one, I love what you say of like the devotion to just our internal self, and how I think of it with myself and how I've explained it to clients in the past as well. It's like you're kind of showing your inner child that they're your priority.
Right.
And that like almost like you're their parent, and like that time with them without distraction or what so-and-so thinks, like they're your priority, and like your bond together is like the most important thing, which I feel like allows us to like relax into self-trust and also like our self-worth more, because we're not, we're saying like, I so deeply honor this time with myself and my inner voice, that like the things on the outside, no matter how big the stage is or who's listening, like doesn't change this relationship.
Totally. And I would say an unexpected consequence of that very thing was also like my childlike innocence also translated into anything is possible. And that worked. That's where I meant by naive. My naivete has worked to my advantage over the years, because in my childlike, limitless mind, it makes sense, even though it's completely nonlinear, illogical quantum leap
Yeah.
that I went from performing in front of 400 people max to 40,000. The child in me is like, of course, like, why not? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that's another thing that if we can maintain or remember or develop as artists, like I've had that for a while throughout my career, is that I don't need a reason. I believe me, I try to make things make sense sometimes. Like, how did this happen? Or but I've got to the place where I don't need this to make sense. I don't need to know how. I'm fine with making a quantum leap if that's going to happen. And so how it's helped is, as a speaker, as a performer, I've not projected unnecessary time into my development, because I'm believing that you got to work your way up. You got to, perform in 1,800 clubs. If that's the truth of what my path is, I'm totally here for it. But I'm like, why do I need to assert that anything's the truth?
Yeah.
Especially something of like, oh, and then you need these credentials and then you need that. So throughout my life, this mindset, I'm sure, is also why I've found myself sharing the stage with world-class speakers when I'd spoken maybe 5 times to 10 people in my living room. How did you do that? How did that happen for you?
Yeah.
Or on stage in front of 40,000 people, opening for a hip-hop icon when I don't even have an album. But it's also my innocence has allowed me to just, again, not project all of this unnecessary belief of like what it's going to take or what credentials you need or whatever. I was like, it's going to take, I'd rather just either be neutral or make it up in my favor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was like, it's going to take whatever it takes, and whatever it takes, I'm here for it. If it takes 30 years, and fine.
Yeah.
But why make up things and believe them? And industries are filled with shit like that. Like,
Totally.
you have to do this and then this and then this for this opportunity to happen. You have to do this, and it's like all of those things can shapeshift you, people please you into some version of yourself that you think you need to be to do something. And I'm like, so I figured that out early, and I've had to remind myself. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
I figured that out early. I was like, oh wow, my what could look like naivete is actually working in my favor. It's the right amount of delusion. But what is delusion? To me, it's delusion. It's equally delusional to believe that things have to happen one way, as it is to believe that I could just be opening for a hip hop icon because that's just the way the cards rolled out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
Because
mean?
why not?
Why not?
Yeah. And I totally feel that so deeply. I mean, I've definitely gotten into that train of thought before too, and I feel like I get my best opportunities when I'm just
Right.
like fully open. But it was funny because I did do some stand-up classes, and I like lead my own powerful stuff events, but I did do some of the stand-up circuit, and I was like, whoa, this is such a thing, like the stand-up circuit, and here's the places that everyone performs, and
Right. It's a whole
thing. And it's not to say that like those don't build reps and you don't meet people, and I'm sure people have had incredible doors open from them, but I was like, what if there's also another way? Like,
right.
yeah.
Why not? I mean, if you're gonna make something up, why not? Like, at the very least, I say just be open. And that's why if I decided to go do stand-up, I would go into it with this, like, I'm available for everything, you know what I mean? And not ingrain in my brain that because those became before me did this, or this is the prescription, or it has to be this way or that way, or it, like, I'd rather it be whatever my soul and God says it is for me. I don't need any information. I'll take it with a grain of salt. Somebody's like, hey, you might want to look out for this. Guidelines, sure. But like, it's when guidelines turn into beliefs, and then we start believing them, then it's not neutral anymore. We are actively creating, because as soon as we have a belief, for example, that, oh, you need to be an established musician or author or this in order to have this type of opportunity, then what happens is literally when you are looking through that belief, then it literally shapes your perception, what you have access to, the thoughts you even have access to, the opportunities that you'll be aware of or unaware of, the opportunities that you'll magnetize or not magnetize are now actually actively being created by that belief structure. So you're literally projecting it onto the world. And whether you recognize it or not, it will influence the decisions that you make. It will make the difference of whether or not you follow your inspiration towards something. Your belief literally could be like, oh, but that's not how this goes. So then it's like, oh, well, I'm trying to go that way. So let me follow my belief rather than following my spirit. It's not casual. Beliefs are massive. They literally are reality creation and reality distortion mechanisms. So when you have a belief, or when you don't have the belief part ingrained in you that this is the way that it has to happen, or it happened for other people. And by the way, one of the ways you know you're really asleep is when you believe a belief is the truth. When you're passionate, you're like, oh no, that's like, it's hard out there, or it's easy out there, or whatever. It's like a hypnotic spell. It's like, this is the truth. And it's like, you forget you're the painter. As a divine being, you're the painter, and now you're the character in the painting, and you forget that, wait a minute, everything that I say, that I believe, that I impassion, that I envision, that I speak, I'm literally creating this character that I'm talking about. I'm creating this world, and then validating and saying, no, it's real. I can show you.
I can build this cage. Yeah, where it's like you're building yourself a cage, but it's like you say it as if it's like you're the not even like victim in it, but just like, this is just how it is. Or
You're like, this is how it is. Look at everything in here. Look at all the history. Look at all the records. I can prove it to you. But that's how hypnotic beliefs are, in believing that something is the truth versus an idea, versus an option, versus one pathway or possibility amongst an infinite number of possibilities.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. There's like a second rabbit hole.
I know.
I could go down there, because I was like, on like a macro level, I'm like, I feel like there's people like who've been mass hypnotized like ahead of our election. And I'm just like,
oh, for sure.
And who knows? Maybe I'm like, we all are to some degree.
100%.
But I'm just like, oh, I wish like there was some like, you know what I mean? Like, Glenda the Good Witch or something. Just be like, okay, everyone, wake up now.
Wake up, everyone.
You think for yourself. We all are critical thinkers here with a desire for unity. But yeah, it was just making me think of that, and kind of having an internal like collective society moments. But hey, maybe that's me thinking collective society is doing that. And maybe it's not. Maybe I'm thinking that, and now it seems that it's happening.
Yeah.
But anyways, I love that thing about Rick Rubin so much. It's so funny. We're just like a side story, and then putting out a manifestation for both of us.
Yes.
With Rick Rubin, my person was Vance Joy. Do you know Vance Joy?
No.
He sings, "Lady coming down to the riptide, taken away to the dark side."
Oh, I love that song.
It's such a good song. And when I was single in 2019, people would be like, oh, like you like dating? And I'd be like, I'm just waiting for my Vance Joy. And like, I would always say that. And then I walked past him one day on Pacific Avenue.
Oh, nice.
And I couldn't believe it. And I didn't say hi, because I was so like, I don't want him to think I'm a fan. And then I vowed to myself, if I see him again one day, I'll say hi. And I was doing Deepak Chopra's 21 Day of Abundance meditation a few months later, and went to Erewhon and had of course, had a friend there. We had just done Barry's boot camp. I was like sweaty on the first day of my period, and I see Vance Joy in there, and I was like, no way, like twice, like in 1 year, just even by like committing to myself, I will see him again and I will say hi. And so I went up to him and said hi, and we had like this whole 10-minute conversation about how I played Riptide. I would play it in children's hospitals for like babies, and it got me through writing my master's thesis, and like I have such a connection to that song. And then afterward, and then I talked to him about adaptogens and explained what those are. And it was like a conversation that I almost blacked out in, because I was like, couldn't believe it. And then afterward, the world shut down like a few weeks later with the pandemic. And I was actually with Ashlyn and Chad and a bunch of other friends quarantining a house in Joshua Tree. I was looking up at the stars, and I was just like, I wonder if Vance Joy is thinking about me the way that I'm thinking about him, and like imagining communicating with him telepathically. And I wrote my song Calling in You, which is like I'm calling in you, are you calling in me? If you only knew how good life could be, you'll see you and me. And it
Nice.
became this like incantation for like trusting that like my person is out there and that they're like, that my life is amazing and when they'll show up, they'll show up. And he ended up, I sent him the song on Instagram. I was like, by the way, I'm the adaptogen girl from Erewhon. Like, because I was
Nice.
like, must be nice for him maybe one day to receive a song because he's always writing them about
Right,
other
right.
people. He read it but didn't respond. But then that song kind of helped me not like lose faith that my person was out there. And then long story short, 6 months later, I met my now husband, Spencer. And the day he proposed to me in Temecula, and when we were walking back to this barn where all of our friends were to celebrate us after he had taken me on this walk to propose, they were playing on the loudspeaker my song, which had just come
Nice.
out on Spotify. And it was like such a
Nice.
funny, like full circle moment of like, I thought I was writing it for Vance Joy,
Right.
but it turned out it was like for my Vance Joy. Um,
That's so awesome.
but the thing that I'll put out on the manifestation vortex is like, even though I'm now married with my husband Spencer, I'm like, one day I want either Vance Joy to be like walking through Erewhon again and like my
Yes.
song to be playing. And he'd be like, I remember
Nice.
that song.
Yes.
Or like one day we'll do a co-writing session together and be like, isn't it great? We're both happily married, but can still co-write together.
Yes.
And also putting out in the manifestation vortex that I get to hear an episode of yours from your podcast one day with Rick
Rick
Rubin.
Rubin. Yes. Let's
Yes.
go. Yes.
So
Heck yeah.
it's done. It's out there.
Done. Yes.
Okay, so with that, the long-awaited story.
The long-awaited story. Do you want me to share the bridge before or after?
Ooh,
Ooh,
that's a tough
decisions.
question.
Yeah.
Um, maybe you share it after, because then it's
Yeah.
like building up to it.
Yeah, yeah. Since
Okay.
we've blue balled our way this far.
Yeah, which
We've
is
got
like the
enough
central
build-up.
theme of the
Yeah.
podcast.
Explode.
You guys ready for this?
You ready for this? So, all right. The story is this. So, going back maybe a year ago, I think I described that's a season of my life where I started doing more music, like specifically freestyling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Freestyle rapping. So, freestyle rapping and spoken word, I was taking those things to the next level as an artist. And then I was like, ooh, with music, I was like, I want to go more in the studio, maybe get on stages. And with my poetry, same thing, share and perform on stage, and as well as like produce spoken word pieces. So I started doing that. And then I had started getting glimpses of this transformational entertainer, right? And coming to the stage is this new thing where I'm doing, spoken word, freestyle rapping, and just different aspects of my artistry. So then, about a year and a half ago now, Chelsea and I got invited to facilitate at this festival in Europe, in Montenegro, which when we got booked in to facilitate, we didn't really look much. It was a calling, and we're like, it was a yes, right?
Yeah,
I say
that's so
that
cool that you're like, I'm just going to Montenegro.
Yeah, exactly. Which I say it with a smile on my face because it turns out the festival was like a tantra festival, which is no big deal, and it was also on like a nudist resort. So like right outside of our room, like nude beach, like literally on the sand, our room, nude beach. So that was
Wow.
just a funny moment. We were like, this is hilarious right now. Anyway, so during this festival, we were invited, the facilitators that were facilitating on that particular day were invited to the front of the room at the beginning of the day in an open ceremony thing that they did every day. And whoever was facilitating that day would get up on the mic and say, my name's Oren Harris. I'm facilitating a workshop called the Awakened Masculine. And it's at 4 o'clock in the such and such den room, right? So on this particular day, it was my turn to do the spiel.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was thinking about what do I want to say and just kind of tuning into that, every time I was thinking about it, my energy was just stagnant and like dropping. I was like, this is weird. I don't have any fear of public speaking. I've been speaking for years. I speak in the flow. I teach flow and I speak in flow. I was like, why is my energy dropping? This is weird. And so I literally thought to myself, or this was a thought I received, I could say from my higher self, was like, well, what if you just didn't do it? And I was like, ooh. And I felt more life come into me, and I felt myself expand instead of contract. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm not going to do it,
Yeah.
which is now being obedient to my spirit. I did think, well, what am I going to do instead?
Yeah.
And no ideas were coming to me. And I was like, okay, I'm comfortable with just getting up in front of the room and seeing what happens. So I walked towards the venue. I was contemplating it every few minutes. I was just like, but nothing was coming to me. And then this thought on the way over came to me, oh, what if I share a spoken word, which has nothing to do with what's being asked of me in this thing that everyone is doing. All the facilitators, they'd been doing it. It was the structure. And when I had the thought came to me, very good distinction, thought coming to me, receiving thought versus just thinking.
Right.
Just a little teaching moment there,
Yeah.
little nugget of a distinction there. When the thought came to me about doing a spoken word, I felt this expansion and this excitement. I was like, ooh, that would be dope. That was it. I didn't think anything after that. I was just like, oh, that'd be amazing. It's illogical, but I just felt, again, I felt an expansion there. Fast forward, I go up. It's my turn. They call me up. I grab the mic. I say, hello, everyone. My name's Oren Harris. I say some things like basically just connecting with the audience. And then Chelsea gets up on the stage next to me and says something really funny about me. I kind of remember what she said. It was hilarious. And she basically was like,
Yeah.
hey, guys, you need to come to Oren's workshop. But she said like just a funny version of that. Like, says, I'm pretty sure she used the word rod of God or the phrase rod of God somewhere in her little moment.
I love that.
Anyway, so as I'm up on stage, the creator of the festival, he gets on the mic. All the facilitators are behind me. And he gets up on the mic and says, by the way, everyone, Oren has this amazing spoken word called The Bridge. Oren, tell them where they can find it. You know, like go to my socials, my IG, my Facebook. And I was like, I just recognized instantaneously, I was like, shit, this is a manifestation. He doesn't know that I thought that.
Yeah.
But he literally said it. And I turned to him. I said, they can find it right here. I'm right here. And I looked at the audience. I was like, you guys want to hear it? I was like, do you mind if I share it? And he's like, sure. And everybody was like, yeah. So then I share The Bridge, the spoken word piece. And so that was the first magical manifestation in this golden thread of the story. And I was like, okay, that was amazing. And I literally shared the spoken word and just said, come to my workshop. It's at 4:00. This is the name of it. So then I do the workshop. It was on the Awakened Masculine. It was amazing. People came. They loved it. Fast forward later in the evening, I was dancing in a crowd to a DJ set by a producer, musician named Mose Music. A lot of people in the community knew him. I had heard his name, but I didn't know of him. He was amazing. I was just dancing, and I had met this music producer named Laura, and we had been vibing on music. And I was like, yeah, I'm just starting to get into the studio. I've been in like a couple times now. I'm new, but at the same time, I feel, inspired by this. I said, can I share a dream with you? She was like, yeah, what's your dream? And so we're dancing, and I said, I see myself on stage performing spoken word with like a music producer, DJ type person who's making up, the music and the soundscape, and we're doing this collaboration. And then I do some freestyle and I said, someone like this guy Mose, and I point up on the stage, and she was like, yeah, I totally see that for you. And so there's this moment of co-creation, which is amazing. And side note, one of the ways that visualization for me, and probably just as a understanding, is most powerful is when it's fulfilling in and of itself, because the attention is not going on, oh, I'm talking about this and imagining this so I can try to create it. It's like you're just feeling it, you're vibrating with it, you're in it, and you're in the enjoyment of the actual imagination.
That's so real, because sometimes it can be so easy to be like, I need to like focus harder, or like,
right now, you're trying to create something versus actually living in it.
Will it happen, or what would it take to make that happen, versus just like, let's just play blue skies for funsies. And it's okay, like you said, if it's just like here and now, and this imagination of it is the thing.
Right.
And saying it out loud and hearing your own voice say it to someone else is so powerful too.
And we're breaking down some quick manifestation codes here.
Yeah.
And sharing it with someone who really sees you and is a great manifestation partner. Certain people, the way they listen, the way they reflect back to you, I knew she was one of those people, right? Is another simple, great manifestation tool, is to share. Like when people share things with me, I'm a good person to share your dreams with. You
Oh
know,
my gosh.
because I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, I totally see that, you and Vance, and I see the whole thing and I feel it, and like now we're
Yeah.
co-creating,
Totally.
right? So I share that with her. Maybe it was a 2-minute conversation. That was it. Next song went on. I went off the dance floor. I was doing something else. 30 minutes later, I'm in the back of the tent outside where the musical venue is. And then Chelsea comes and grabs me. She's like, babe, they want you to come to the stage. I was like, oh, I'm making a video right now. She's like, come to the stage. I was like, for what? She's like, I don't know. They just seemed excited and told me to go find Oren and tell him to come to the stage. I go to the stage, and the festival creator was up on the stage. It was like 3 other people, and the DJ Mose was doing his set, and he's like, oh, there's Oren. He's like, Mose wants to know if you'll get up on stage and perform your spoken word over his music.
Whoa.
Another magical manifestation. Laura, who I shared it with, she didn't say nothing. It was just between the two of us. So another manifestation that I'm now living in. So I get on the stage, I do the bridge, and I'm doing it over his music, which I've never practiced before. So it's literally like, it's a spoken word, but it's like I'm doing a song, right? So I'm performing this now, and the place was like electric and bumping. I felt like Eminem in 8 Mile, where it's like, the whole place is like, whoo, whoo, which I had imagined myself doing that as well. And then when I was done with the bridge, it's a very short piece. And then people were just like, not saying encore, but they were like, yeah, keep going. This is such a vibe. So then I freestyled. I started freestyle rapping over his music. And so then that whole vision manifests 30 minutes before I had just spoke that into existence.
Wow.
Earlier. So the connection there is, had I not followed my spirit in the morning and shared the spoken word, Mose would have never heard the spoken word and even conjured or inspired the idea in him to spontaneously invite me on stage to perform it.
Yeah. And I, like, when you said, like, the creator of the festival was like, where can we find your music? And it's almost like the universe was like handing it to you on a silver platter. And that's happened to me in the past where I've had moments like that, but I actually self-sabotaged because it was like, part of me was like, oh, I don't deserve it, or it's like too easy.
Right.
And I've had moments where I've like had a door like opened and I just had to walk through it, but like part of me like held back for fear of like,
sure, I've done that
worthiness
countless times. Yeah.
And it's such a great moment of like, this is my chance. Like, he's even bringing up the poem, like, I'm gonna do it now.
Right. Exactly. So did it now, and then another spontaneous unplanned moment later, I get invited on stage. It's now. I'm like, it's happening. And so then I did that, and my friend Laura, the music producer, musician, who I shared the dream with, she was part like, holy shit, this is happening. So she captured it. And so then I posted it on Instagram. This is chapter 3. I posted it on Instagram, and a lot of people were commenting on it. Like, this is amazing. And I wrote up a nice little post about the magic of how it even happened in the first place, the golden thread.
Yeah.
And then the creator of the festival, which maybe there's like 400 people at, he's also the main creator of the Exit Festival, which is this massive, one of the largest music festivals in Europe. He comments on the video that I posted, how'd you like to perform this at the Exit Festival? And I was like, let me check my schedule. Let me check with my agent that I don't have yet. You know what I mean? I was like, it was surreal. I was like, I think he's serious. So I was like, yes. And then I messaged him, and we had a couple of follow-up conversations, and he was like mad busy. But then I realized, I'm like, this is actually in motion now. It's happening, which then leads us into the next chapter. So that's how I got invited and went from performing as a performer to at most 400 people. Like, that festival had about 400 people.
Whoa.
And as a performer, and even as a speaker, I haven't spoken to near that amount of people, but definitely not as a performer.
Yeah.
So it was like, that moment at that festival, and then mycelium, happened after that happened. In between there and the Exit Festival was the mycelium, right?
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm like, that was mycelium was the continuation of that happening, and pre Exit Festival. So I'm like, wow, I'm on a roll now.
Yeah.
So then, yeah, I got invited to the Exit Festival, and it's like Black Eyed Peas were there, Gucci Mane, who's like a hip hop icon, all of these famous world class musicians gathered together in this massive music festival, and me.
Wow.
And he did say to me, and I kind of already knew this intuitively, that I think he saw me as a bridge, meaning like I have the capacity to reach the mainstream with like messages that are of like a spiritual nature, about consciousness, about unity, but essentially deliver it in a way and embody it in a way that can be digestible, that can be received. That's a bridge. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like a bridge.
You're living it. You're living the
Right.
poem.
So now I'm literally living the poem, and I'm like, wow, I'm here in this massive arena. And so that was another miraculous manifestation. And I mean, we'll see how many of the other stories that
Come
complete
from
this
that.
story. There were many, right? Because now, if you could even imagine, like, with perspective, I haven't performed at a festival like that, certainly not one of that size. I haven't been in the studio banging out tracks or have any, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows my music. And I'm on the world stage now with all these famous people.
Yeah.
And then there's me. And nobody was introducing me either. That like they didn't have like an MC like, and the next act coming up is, they just had a run of shows. So I'm like, wow. So there was all of these nuanced layers of artistry up level and like soul expansion and like drawing out parts of me and gifts that were in me and a capacity that was in me that I had not lived into yet because it was not necessary.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll share a couple of those that were like key.
Please.
One is I was like, okay, not only do I need to do my performance, I was performing at the opening ceremony and then the following night, which was even bigger. But I need to go out there, establish myself, create rapport, connection, establish who I am and what's going to happen, and do my performance. And all that needs to happen. And none of this I had time to practice for either.
Yeah.
I was just so locked in and so present that I didn't have time to think about it. Like, and so I basically created with the audience, paraphrase. I was like from the moment I went on stage, I think I did like a call and response thing to like get the crowd going. And I was just like, my name's Oren Harris. I'm here from California. You guys don't know me. And what I can promise you is I'm going to bring 100% of my heart and my soul to this stage for the time we have together. And you guys are going to do the same. Kind of like all in favor, say I
Yeah.
basically enroll them in like,
Participate.
let's have, but imagine doing that with 40,000 people
That's so powerful.
that don't even know you. So it's like, there was no room for half stepping or apologeticness or like, oh, I'm Warren Harris, you don't know me, permission to be here, please. Or
Yeah.
kind of, I'm going to be on stage for a few minutes and then, hey, Gucci Mane's coming on next. He's going to be, no, it's like, I'm here.
You're like, this is the moment.
This is a moment.
Yeah.
I'm a featured act here and we're going to have a amazing time. And so that was unexpected. I had very little information or connection because it was kind of, there was just a lot going on and also like a family emergency happening in the background. So there was very little communication to give me details. Imagine I'm going in, I don't know about like sound checks and all these different things on that level and what I need to be thinking about or what's going to be in my space. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Wow.
So I was out on the island also by myself in a way, and had to make key decisions. Thankfully, on the first night, I finally got in touch with one of the creative directors of the opening ceremony. So I had a real human to talk to, or not a real human, a conversation was able to be had
Yeah.
very quickly, but still a conversation about here's the vibe, here's my ideas. Does it fit the vibe? Who's coming on before me? Who's coming on after me? The things that just as an artist would be helpful. So I had a lot more assistance there. The second night, which was even bigger, it was just like mainly like, well, we trust you, just do your thing type
Wow.
thing. Right. So, and I want to share this next part because it was one of the biggest pieces for me of all the lessons and that happened and all of the challenges that were, sparking these lessons. And I want to share this elegantly because it's like just to keep honor and respect to all parties involved.
Yeah.
So what happened was during the rehearsal, I, the run of show and the rehearsal, these kids that are part of this music art project, and they're like kids that, underprivileged kids, and, artistry is kind of like one of their, there's this program to just kind of nurture and develop these kids as artists and really, just help them to thrive in life, right? Really beautiful mission. And so these kids were playing like the cajones and the drums, and they were doing this performance before me, and I was going to go on after them. So at the rehearsal, they were on stage doing things. I met a couple of them. I started connecting with them. I connected with their director and the mission and the vision for the kids, and just really moved my heart. And I had a great connection with them. And so then after they were done, I got up on stage. I was doing sound checks, mic checks, but they were still on the stage. And I invited them over. I was freestyle rapping, just like doing a sound check. I was just like freestyling. And I saw that they were vibing me. I was like, come over here. So they all came over here, and we had this like little freestyle circle.
That's so cute.
Yeah, it was super cute. And one of the kids grabbed the mic, or I handed him the mic, and he started freestyling in another language. And so then the creative director saw the chemistry, and she's like, oh, this is last minute. I don't even know if this would be worth trying, but maybe later on when you actually do the performance, maybe you and the kids could do something together. And I was like, oh, that's my specialty, spontaneity, like freestyle,
Yeah, you're like,
make some
more
shit up.
please, yes.
Right. But to do that in front of 30,000
Yeah.
people, because there was about 30,000 people the first night. Anyway, we talked about it briefly, and I basically said, I'm down. I said, I talked to the director and to the kids and the creative director. I said, look, if there's a moment and I feel like it's going to flow at the moment, I'll signal you. And I said, if I hand you the mic, this one kid in particular, just stay connected with me. So then if I want it back, you just hand it back, so we can be in this rhythm. So that was it. There was no plan, just kind of like a possibility. Fast forward later in the evening, I do my performance. They were on stage behind me. And then I was freestyling, and I said something about, exit star seeds, which was the theme of the whole entire festival.
Yeah.
Something, exit star seeds, seedlings, future generation. Let's see what the seed brings. And I cued this kid to come up. He starts freestyling. He does it, maybe 15 seconds, hand the mic back. The crowd, my thing is over. I big up the kids. People cheered for the kids. And then later that evening, everybody's like, oh, this is amazing. The performance was great. Oh, that was so beautiful. And I'm just like on cloud nine. Then the creator of the festival, in a very nice way, was just like, the kid thing, that wasn't, you shouldn't have done that. Like, he wasn't really ready for that moment. Like that, he's like, the energy dropped a little bit. And so it was a little bit of a bummer. And I was like, oh, but he was nice. And he said, the performance was great. And he's just like, that part didn't really work. Anyway, I found out later the next day that, it really had upset him. And then, the creative director, and she co-signed on it. And so this whole thing's unfolding there.
Oh, wow.
So now this is in my space. Imagine this. And going into the next night, remember, I didn't have a creative director that I was in touch with.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to message him, and he's like, had family things going on and just massive organization of the festival. So he was just not that accessible. And so I was like now trying to run my performance and my ideas by him. And basically, he was like, well, I trust you. But mind you, the first night I'd made a mistake.
Or like been spontaneous. And
right. I was being spontaneous. And I was like, so now that was in my space. And, and then he had left me a message and also said, just kind of reiterated what he'd already said. He said it very nicely, but he was like, the kid wasn't really ready, and this is a massive production, and this is the environment, basically maybe not such a good idea. And
It
so
sounds like it was still such a sweet moment, though.
it was. I mean, it was.
Yeah,
It was because in the context of how I was connecting to why I was there and the theme of the festival, it was
it was
it
perfect
it
in
was actually
certain ways.
perfect.
Yeah,
Just my opinion. And the creative director felt the same thing, and so did Chelsea, and so did everybody I talked to.
yeah,
Because the spirit of it was not like, look how amazing this kid is, as a rapper. The spirit of it was like, let's lift up the future generations and like big up these kids and support their mission,
and that
especially.
kid is probably going to remember that
Oh
forever.
my God,
Just like getting the mic and feeling like his dreams are possible, and it's yeah,
the director of those kids was in tears, and the kids were just so grateful, and I was so moved, and it was just such a special moment in that context. And I get it, it wasn't the intention of the festival, but it was something special
yeah,
happening, how it actually manifested. Anyway, so that, he left me a message. This is 4 hours before my performance on the next night. And I told you I wasn't really in touch with anybody. And it basically was like, hey, we trust you. Whatever your performance is, you're going to do, just do it. And I'm like, but just don't mess it up. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't say that, but that was kind of the feeling that I had. I was like, man, this is wild. And then I had a moment with Chelsea where it was a real kind of just like one of those reminder moments. First of all, it broke my heart a little bit that these kids, just when I felt the level of aliveness and joy and like somebody cares about us, and the contrast of like this was a bad idea, and the irony of the song they were playing with
yeah.
the drums. It was the Michael Jackson song, all I want to say is that they don't really care about us.
Oh,
All I want to say is that. So the message there was like, hey, we're out here. You know what I
yeah,
mean? These kids trying to make it. And so just the juxtaposition of that and like the intention of the festival and the whole thing, it was heartbreaking to me.
yeah,
And so I sat with my boo, Chelsea, and this might sound overly simplistic in my process, but it's also something I've mastered over the years. I'm like, okay, I have a very, very real moment coming up in 4 hours. Now, I already had enough things to think about anyway.
yeah,
Everything's new to me. And now I'm thinking, because I'm like, I don't want to mess this up. I want to do my best. And this thing with the kids, and so I'm
yeah,
like, this is not a good state for me to be in right now. And so I shared with Chelsea, and this is what I meant by, I said it was heartbreaking. I expressed my heart unconditionally.
yep,
I just to get the energy moving, and like, and it just really allowed me then to connect to the power of my spirit and why I was there,
mm,
because I didn't have a lot of people to consult with about my idea. So I'm like, this is what felt like a gamble,
yeah,
my performance, because I'm like, this may or may not fit the expectation. I've never
yeah,
done this before. I didn't, you know what I mean? And I didn't have a
totally.
lot of guidance. So I'm like, so once I shared the heartbreak and just really got in touch with the heart of why I'm there and of my mission, and the kids just brought that out of me, because I'm like, this is what I'm here for, just in the essence. Then I could feel my spirit, and I was like, I got called here because of who I am, because I don't follow the rules, because I'm plugged into spirit, because I'm brave in my heart, my spirit. And I'm like, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
Right. And it's like all of a sudden my mind started getting still again. And I was just like, I'm not playing, not that I think they were playing games, but it's like it's a mass audience, and it's like it's quite common in entertainment to appeal or have some sort of guidelines of, this is a mass audience, and like, what are you going to bring to the stage? I
yeah,
was like, I can't do that. That's not what makes me me. That's not what makes me shine. And so literally it was like this blazing fire and destiny decision. I'm like, I'm going all in on whatever it is that I'm doing and being all me, rather than being careful. Because the carefulness, even though it's well intended, that's where the people pleaser comes in. That's where the mind comes in. Maybe I'll say it this way. Maybe I'll say it that way. Maybe I won't be too much of this or too much of that. That feels
right.
like prison to me. And I was just like, it was literally like recovering all my powers. Like, no, I'm not doing that. And that's in everyone's best interest. I'm going to be myself. And I went out there and crushed it.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that amongst many other stories, one of the most significant things, tying it back to the original thread on a quote unquote smaller moment of saying, hey, I'm going to go up, I'm not going to do this thing of introducing myself. I'm going to
Right.
do this instead. I carried that all the way to a quote unquote much bigger stakes, much bigger arena, but stayed true to the principle. So anytime I felt pressure, which I definitely felt pressure when I got the message that he was upset and
Yeah.
all the things, I was like, all right, this is either going to get extremely anxious, overwhelming, and complex, or it's going to get profoundly simple. And I'm like, I'm going to go towards simplicity.
Always.
And
Yeah.
and that's where I was just like, doesn't matter 40,000 people or 4 people. I'm here to be authentic. I'm here to give voice and expression to the mission, to the calling, to the reason why I'm here. That's why we're here. Drown out all the noise, all the lights, all the other things that are also their own thing and have their own relevance. That's how I dealt with the pressure, especially when the pressure really got cooking and when I made a mistake and, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
color too far outside the lines. I was just like, and so I think that moment is such a key moment to the story, because not only did it allow me to shine in the way that I was meant to, but I kept my integrity. I kept that obedience, and that's where honor lives.
Yeah.
That's where I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, like, if this doesn't work out, I will be able to sleep at night. I will be able to live with my own soul, knowing that I was brave and that I lived in what matters to my heart and to my spirit, and that's it. That's success.
Yeah.
But it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Just
Well, I love that, like, you say that, because it's like, also when we're are authentically ourselves, it's like not everyone's gonna like it all of the
right,
time, and
right,
it's like you almost have to like be okay with, like you said, like sometimes it means people not aren't pleased, but it's like not their cup of tea, or they didn't
right.
resonate in a certain way, but it's like not letting that knock you from your center, of continuing to like do it anyways, and also trust in all the people who did find it like super meaningful, and letting it not knock you off your center, and like going into the next day as well. It's
Totally.
like a test.
Yeah, it was. I felt like I was in university, like PhD, triple
Yeah.
PhD, like with all the things that I mentioned to you. And yeah, I feel good that I also passed what I feel like is the test and stayed true when the stage got way bigger, with hundreds of thousands of dollars invested even just into shooting the thing and the whole thing, and just like, this is, the impact that it can have on my career. Can
Yeah.
you stay true to yourself? Then that's I was living the conversation that I had with Rick Rubin, that we were relating to, like, yeah, it's so important as you get bigger and bigger and more visible to just like stay true to thyself, stay true to the artist, stay true, stay true, stay true. And so that was my moment of like,
Recommitting to.
like, here we are.
And when you did that, like, what was like going through your head, like, during and after those like moments of just walking off the stage with like the 40,000 people, even as you're like so committed to
It
yourself, was it
was
just like
just surreal, like literally like awake in a dream. Like, this is really happening right now. That just happened. This is happening. I was so in it and so fulfilled by it
yeah,
that I just kept like riding that wave. I Don't get me wrong. I was just like, then I had an opportunity to be like, whoa, what just happened?
yeah,
But yeah, after it, definitely during it, I was just present. I was locked in the same way I would have been, you know, in my living room with 4 of my friends doing open mic poetry night. You know what I mean?
yeah,
But I prepared that way, all the way up until it, and that was my primary preparation. Be present, be true, and then I was like practicing like my performance or whatever I was going to do, but that was the primary preparation. So I think that afterwards I was still so present. I
yeah,
was definitely more like it's like, the wedding that finally is done after months of preparation.
Yeah.
So there was that celebration, that relief, and the surrealness basically of just like, and now I'm walking around and people are asking me for my autograph. I
Whoa.
had a person that bumped into me, and I literally saw him watching a video that he took of me on stage on his phone, and he saw me and he's looking at his phone. He's like, "Is this you?"
Oh my God,
You
that's
know what I
so
mean?
cool.
So that whole thing continued throughout that night. And then, of course, forget about trying to like sleep that night. I was just like so lit for like probably days after that. And then I was unpacking and integrating all of the lessons and just continuing to receive it, and let that wave of creation continue on, because it's part of this larger wave that's happening for me anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. I like hearing that story and hearing glimpses of it at Powerful Stuff. And then again now just like reminds me, like, and I told you this at Powerful Stuff night, like ask and it is given.
Yeah.
Like when we, instead of spending all of our like time, like worrying about the past or what other people would think, if we like to harness that creative energy into like what would be so fun to create
Yeah.
and just like saying it out loud, it's like those things start to happen so much more quickly. And yeah, it reminds me of like this ritual my friend and I used to have called future walks every month,
Oh,
where
nice.
we'd go like at the start of like May, but act like it was the end of May. Be like, oh my God, what an incredible month. And like sometimes it works even better when it's just like an indefinite timeline in the future. But just like the excitement and like the possibility that you had in the whole story is so cool.
I totally see that in you. When I say that, I mean specifically, there's so many ways to manifest, but how I would describe how your way of being, and probably my way of being, is this like childlike innocence. Wouldn't it be cool if, oh, that would be amazing, that would be dope? Like that's
Yeah,
how I was when I said to my friend, oh, I said, can I share a dream with you? She was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what I mean? It's like that inherently has you in this detached state where you're just like really able to feel and embody the thing you're saying, instead of think about it's in the future, how do I create it? But that innocent childlike kind of like, wouldn't it be nice if, or wouldn't this be cool, or oh, imagine this,
yeah, because
is
you're
such a powerful manifestation state of
to-
being.
totally. Yeah. And it actually totally reminds me of I'm like seeing like now that you're saying these stories, it's like unearthing stories that I forgot about, which is good for like current Meredith to remember. But I've always wanted to like, yeah, do more like performances and with my music. And when I was in Costa Rica, I was at getting my yoga teacher training 10 years ago, and I was at Punta Mona Permaculture Center run by Stephen Brooks. If you know, like he's big in
Mm.
the
Yeah, yeah.
permaculture space in Costa Rica. And I just brought my guitar for my yoga teacher training, and I was playing like Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind and like one or two of my own songs. And I didn't even ever hear about Envision Festival like before
Uh-huh.
that. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you should totally come play at Envision Festival." And
Nice.
I was like, I've
That's
like
amazing.
didn't have a music manager, like I don't know if I even had songs on Spotify then, maybe even just one, but like flew back to Costa Rica like 8 months later to like play the main stage of Envision like during the day, like as like a
Nice.
not like no musical
Right,
trace of
right.
me online. And it was just
It
like,
makes sense. You get the
yeah, I get
thing.
it. But I just thought of that story now. I was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, it's like when you're like, oh, this would be so fun, or I want to do more of this, but you're not like, oh, I need to get a manager. I need to like get this
Right.
like music website built, or like, you're like, yeah, it could happen.
Totally. And I feel like, and maybe this is a good, bow to kind of wrap it all together.
Yeah.
I feel like right now is such a critical time in our evolution and in our world. And there is such mm, a need for certain things that, I say this with compassion, might be harder for us right now, like dreaming, like magic, like innocence,
Hmm.
right? Sometimes when these things are the hardest is when we need them the most. And I feel like we're at one of those moments right now, and, you know, the like dreaming, creating, all the things we're talking about are, they're have their own, I guess, purpose in of themselves, for ourselves, for our souls, for our artistry, for our career. And in a larger collective sense, it impacts the planet. And I feel like that is so important right now, that we don't forget to dream, that we don't forget to uh, believe in magic. It's like it's seeding something so powerfully needed in the world, that the that is so needed, especially in times of great transformation and chaos and things like breaking apart. Um, our going after our dreams, our speaking of our truth, our giving of our artistry, our voice, our message, which is our medicine, is actually needed for the world right now more than ever. And even speaking to this childlike state of manifestation, there's a quote, paraphrase, in the Bible. I think it says something like, they will see the kingdom of heaven. You see the kingdom of heaven through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
And there's something so potent and profound about that in relation to where the world is in its human evolution, and how it is the spirit of the child, the spirit of innocence, of openness, of receptivity, that is going to be one of the things that I feel is going to allow us to create new earth, new systems, to actually envision, imagine, imagineer new futures, because clearly the knowledge and the wisdom that we have hasn't in and of itself done it. And so we actually need artists more than ever before. We need dreamers more than ever before. And that aspect of innocence, which can feel very vulnerable to be in our open-hearted innocence when there's so much turmoil or chaos around, but it's also the time we need it the most. And I feel like it's part of the pathway forward. And so you become a lighthouse, a beacon of light, a demonstration, an emanation, a permission for others to dream in a time that the world really needs it. We need to dream up and new systems, new ideas, new realities, new ways of being. And so it's so important right now.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'd love that you brought back unity, because I was like, that was another thread, and it's kind of like finding that within ourselves. We were saying with us being like multi-dimensional beings, and then when we're able to express that, it's like we create the ripple effect of permission as a society, of like we can find this in each other, and we can find even greater acceptance in ways that we can create an even more beautiful tapestry of the world that we want to see.
Totally.
Oh gosh, what an inspirational note to end on. So before we wrap this episode up, I have one rapid fire question, and then want to hear the bridge, and then we'll end with a few questions for our listeners.
All right.
So the rapid fire question is just how you were dancing with your friend, talking about wouldn't it be so fun if I was on the stage doing the thing. What would that be for you now? What's coming through in this moment of something else that would be super fun?
It would be super fun to be my mad scientist, wizard, creative director self in a large scope creative project with someone like Rick Rubin.
Okay.
Yeah, whether that's working with a brilliant artist on an album or working on but to work on a big scale project with a high level creative genius, beautiful soul. We'll just say Rick, specifically Rick.
Okay, Rick, if you're listening.
Rick, yeah. And
you know where to find Oren intuitively.
And to bring my gifts as an artist, wherever that fits into this thing, but also as a creative director, because it's one of the newer superhero powers that I'm bringing into the world. And it's connected to my human design, which is reflector, and my ability to synthesize, to reflect, to harmonize things. That's a new superpower that I'm playing with in team settings, in group settings, where, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so
totally.
I would love to be in that type of a collaboration with something that is, a project or a message or something that really can impact the world, but do so with Rick and people like Rick.
Okay.
Yes.
It's done.
It's done. Yes.
Check. They're like, the
Thank
universe
you.
has the order, so we'll just see, is it standard shipping? Is it 2 day speed
Right,
delivery?
exactly.
I love that. Okay, and then the much awaited bridge poem, if you could do the honor of
Yes.
reciting.
Yes. All right. Should I look at you, camera, or does it matter?
You can look at the camera if you want, or whatever feels most true for you.
Okay. This camera right here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say this slowly so you don't get it twisted. You are pure love. You are divinely gifted. I came back in time just in case you missed it. A message from God. The veil has been lifted. Only love is real. All else is illusion. The matrix of mind is just pure confusion. Lost in the night, we hid from the light. We created a self with eyes but no sight. Lost in the land of perception, misdirection, a dream of separation. This is inception, hypnotic deception. Die to the dream, a complete resurrection. Awake beyond sight with spiritual vision. Complete surrender in just one decision. It's time to wake up and remember your worth. You are the bridge between heaven and earth.
So beautiful. I love that I came back in time just in case that you missed it. It's so good. It's just like, this is your future self speaking, or just like fully trust in how it's unfolding. It's so good. And
Thank you.
if we had a whole other hour, maybe I'll have to have you on for a part 2 when I'm back from South America, because your other poem, Mr. Nice Guy, I feel like there's a whole podcast episode just like untangling that as well.
Oh, yeah. And even the bridge is very short, but there's layers in there,
Yeah.
And it's art, so people can experience it however they want, and it's intended to be like coded in that way. But one thing I will say that you mentioned, the I came back in time, that's a double entendre, right? I came back in time like I'm from the future now, and I came back in time just in case you missed it.
Yeah,
right?
like also in time, like.
But also I came back just in time, like it's the 11th hour, and like I came back in time, just in time.
Oh, I love that. I'm just getting that now.
Yeah.
There's so many layers. Okay, last little thing on the bridge, and then we'll wrap it up. But what was the divine stroke of inspiration for you to write that?
It came to me at like 4:00 in the morning, like the energy of it first, and I like the essence of it, and then I tried to go back to sleep, and then I woke up and I realized this thing, the creative muse was like, we don't operate in time. It's game time right now.
Yeah.
So then I became present. I started listening and then started receiving the essence of it. It was almost like a download in a way. And then I started unpacking it. And then basically I wrote it. It wrote itself. And then I went back to sleep. And that was the completion of it from start to finish. That's how it happened consciously in time. But looking back in hindsight, it was many things coalescing together in my life, in my experience, that probably inspired that particular piece. Being someone who is a bridge in many ways, and me recognizing, kind of looking at this like, okay, all these different timelines in the field of potentiality, but like, where are we headed? Where is this new earth? What is it? It's this thing. If I imagine it's another timeline, that means it's already happened.
Yeah.
Right. And just the same way I could send back messages from my future self to my now self and feel the vibration and the frequency of that and essentially upload that into the now.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking about that more on a collective level for the planet itself, and applying that same concept on a planetary level of how could I be of most value to the planet. And then that probably connected the dots in my consciousness of like, this okay, bridging the future back into the now, like we've
Yeah.
seen in some movies. And then it just started coming to me, a message from God. The veil has been lifted. Like it's already happened.
Whoa.
It's already the veil's been lifted, and kind of like, here's what happened. So then I go back into time and be like, we created it, lost in a land of perception, misdirection. That's the dream
Yeah.
that we're
in.
waking up from.
Yeah.
And then I end it with where I started it, which was like, I came back in time and I'm like, oh, by the way, that's the now.
Right. We're here and
We're here. Exactly.
And you're the bridge.
And you're the bridge. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. I love that so much. I feel like that's a poem, even just to like meditate or listen to many times over. Like just, and I'm sure it like hits in different ways each time.
Yeah.
I know it has
it
for
hits me
hearing it Wednesday and then hearing it now.
Yeah, it hits me too because, I'm part of it. I'm in my own experience of it personally. And so it's like I'm living in the next chapter of that poem. I haven't written the next poem yet.
Yeah.
I probably will, but it's like that was like a completion point for me, not just as a spoken word piece to deliver, but as my soul. I was in a completion point moment. So I'm commentating about it and it's for everyone, but also it's reflective of my own journey. So now I feel like since then I'm like living the next chapter of the spoken word. Because if I came back in time, that means I came back from somewhere. And so it's like I've gone back to where I came from. I'm still here, like physical time, space, reality, but in my consciousness, in my soul, I've since gone back. And it's almost like, one way to say it is like the journey to the kingdom. And the journey, now I'm living the journey within the kingdom. So it's like bringing heaven to earth. Yeah. And that was the bridge between heaven to earth, is heaven and earth. So I'm like living the next. And so I probably will write a part 2.
Oh my gosh. I can't wait. Watch the space. We were like, where will it be performed? Will it be at a Powerful Stuff event? Will it be at Coachella? Will it be at Mayan Warrior on Burning Man? We don't know.
Or all of them.
All of them. Yeah, all of the above. I love that. Okay. Wow. I mean, I'm like, we'll definitely need a part 2 when I get back from South America, because this was like a 2-hour podcast unexpectedly, but it just scratched the surface. So just to end with like 3 or 4 questions for our listeners, if they're wanting to tap into their intuition and creative process, so we can kind of distill all of the good nuggets in like maybe 3 or 4 questions to get the listener thinking.
Yeah. Or questions that I have for listener?
Okay. A question for them to kind of start to tap into their intuition or their creative process, or kind of owning those different parts of themselves.
So one question I have for the listener is, what people or environments in your life stimulate, activate your creativity and or reflect your truest essence? Whether that's a bestie, a particular community, an environment like Powerful Stuff, and double down on those things, meaning spend more time. This is a very simple, actionable thing. Spend more time with that person, with those people in that community, even online. Like Rick Rubin was a figure in my mind. I didn't know how to get a hold of Rick Rubin. I manifested him, but I still spent time with him though.
Totally.
Right. And I cannot state the value, the simplicity and the value and the power of environment. It's always been the case, but I think more than ever before, environment, who you're surrounding yourself with, what environments are you spending time in? Again, that reflect and draw out of you your creativity, but that support you in your fullness and who you are. Those types of environments, super, super key.
Yeah.
With your intuition, here's an exercise. It's an abbreviated version of what I call my MAP process, which is an acronym for Magic Action Plan. It's the intersection of the magical and the practical.
I love that.
Thank you. I really need to brand that shit more.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. That's so good.
Make a list of your old stale. No, I'm kidding. It's not stale. It's fresh off the press. But your backlogged intuition, meaning intuitive hits that you've gotten that you haven't acted on yet, whether it felt like a revelation striking or something small, like I just got this hit to reach out to Meredith.
Yay.
You know what I mean? Like, list these things down, the ones that are backlogged and the ones that you can channel from the now. And a tip is, don't be attached to the result of following. The result of following it fundamentally is the completion and the fulfillment of your spirit. You're already winning. But we all know this is where magic happens, because your intuition, your higher self, has a higher vantage point, a broader perspective that you can't see, and it orchestrates and organizes destiny, moments of synchronicity and magic along your path. But make the list of the intuition, and then take action on it. One of the ways to accelerate and amplify like the power of your intuition very rapidly is simply to follow your intuition.
Isn't that crazy?
Isn't that great? It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It's like, because it grounds it in. It takes it from just this energy and this frequency that's kind of like you're accessing it, and it brings it into your body when you root it through decision and into action.
Yeah.
Right? And make a game out of it. You know, like I look at it like, divine appointments. And I will routinely, I made it a part of my life to like reach out to people and connect with people that just got a hit. Even if it's not logical, I don't have some important thing that I'm going to say to them.
Yeah.
But just doing that, I can't tell you how many things have manifested for me following my intuition in that way. And in my business, no kidding, your intuition is also one of your best business coaches, business advisors. Like in my business, I bet in the last 3 years, I'm just conservatively guessing,
Yeah.
I bet at least $200,000 of my income came exactly from following my intuition, and without attachment, and without it having any logical or linear kind of connection to a result. But I was just like, oh, I just got the hit to reach out to this person and say this, or to say yes to this thing that seems like, oh, I don't know if I have time for that, or that's interesting, or what is that over there? But I felt the intuition, I felt the spark, and I follow it. And one or several things manifest that I had been dreaming about or intending at one point in time or another.
Wow.
And I just wanted to give that business example because I'm a bridge, right?
Yeah.
It's like spiritual world, business world, spiritual world.
We have both.
Like practical magic. I practically followed my intuition, and practically at least $200,000 of my income just in the last 3 years has come not from some business guru, some business coach, the next, reel that's telling me how to do the thing and the plan and all the funnels and all that. Literally just
those
from
hits.
Following those hits.
I love that tip so much, because I call it like going to the self-trust gym of like, when my intuition speaks, I listen. When my intuition speaks, I listen. And it's like starting with like things that like, could be like low stakes. Like, where should I go for dinner tonight?
Yes.
Or like, which coffee shop should I go to?
Yes.
And then, it's like, who should I reach out to? And you never know like what's going to happen from that. I love that so much. Any final parting wisdom? I mean, you've already given us
the third
so much.
question. So there's two questions.
Yeah.
The third question, and this is, I mean, they're all deep, but this is one's like hit you right to the core.
Yeah.
And do this at your own guidance. Imagine yourself at the end of your life, because the truth is, none of us know when that actually is going to happen. Imagine yourself at the end of your life, reflecting back on your life, and with deep, deep honesty, what's going to be most important to you? What are you going to wish you had done, said, not done, not said? What are you going to wish you would have done? What's going to be most important to you when you trim all the fat and all the stuff? What's going to be most important to you? And whatever the answer is to that question, maybe you list these things, maybe you write it as a journal, whatever you get from that moment, that appointment with your own transition, devote yourself to those things now, to the best of your ability now. Integrate them, implement them, prioritize those things now.
Yeah.
Right. And that's one of the things that I've done in many dimensions. And when we talk about like my artistry and my voice, it's one of those things. It's like, to the best of my ability, God willing, the first way it came to me is like, I will not die with my music in me if I can help it.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, my music, that's my medicine. That's my voice. I'm like, I don't care if I trip, slip, fall, crawl. I was doing all of that. if I'm terrified, I'm going to do my best to like get this out.
Yep.
And because but that became because I did the exercise. It wasn't an exercise. My soul handed that one to me. I was like over 10 years ago, I literally was imagining myself at the end of my life playing dominoes or something like that with some friends, reminiscing about the old days. And I imagined some of my accomplishments. But the thing that really moved me was I actually imagined my regrets.
Yeah.
I imagine like, oh, the thing I wish I would have said. I wish I would have been brave enough to do that. I imagine having fuel left in my tank. You know, as they say in sports, leave it all on the court. Then win or lose, you've won. And then I was just like, whoa, it terrified me.
Yeah, what is the cost?
I was
if
just
you don't
like,
do that?
the pain of that outweighed the pain of rejection, the pain of failing and then trying and starting over, doing all these different things.
Yeah.
And so then that I vowed to do my best. And I was like, oh, that's going to be a point of completion for my soul, of fulfillment. It's going to be a very important checkpoint for me. So if it's going to be that at the end of my life, then it means it is now.
Yes.
So,
oh my gosh. So you
like,
came back just in time, just in
right,
case you missed
just
it.
in case you missed
You did it.
I gave
Loop closed it.
Loop closed. There we go.
Oh my gosh. I love those 3 questions so much. Thank you so much for sharing like your like unique story with so much rich wisdom for everyone to take with them, to tap into their authentic self, their intuition, their own creative process. And where can people find you? They want more Oren or want to see that amazing 40,000 person clip.
Yeah. I'm most active on the Instagram at Oren Harris, OrenHarris. And my website is also orenharris.com. And then I am also on Facebook. I'm not that active on Facebook, but as Oren Harris. And yeah, that's where to find me.
Amazing. Okay, well, I'll put it in the show links. And who knows, maybe someone's listening to this podcast right now being like, I want to run into Oren, and you're there, Rick Rubin, you know?
Right.
You're there, Oren Harris.
You're like, I manifested you.
Yeah, and then you both co-create a poem together and then perform it at Powerful Stuff next year.
Right. Oh, hey.
At our you know, like Madagascar edition or wherever in the world we're ready to be called to. Okay. Well, all of that's to say, thank you so much for coming on the show. We'll have a quick meditation for you all in the mini episode with this, and I'll see you next week for more powerful stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, you. Thank you for coming on this powerful journey with me. I hope it was as powerful for you as it was for me. And if it was, it would mean the world to me if you rate, review, and subscribe to Powerful Stuff so I can keep bringing you the goods. We can keep going on this transformative journey together. And if there's powerful stuff that you want to share with me, with the Powerful Stuff community, tag us on Instagram at That's Powerful Stuff or The Meredith Baker. And I look forward to seeing you next week.